What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. It's Anthony with Jhuly's Aquatics and Gardening, and today I am going to be making up a batch of planting mix. Now I know there's a lot of confusion out there as to what planting mix is. So in today's video I'm hoping to go over three main things. Number one, what is planting mix? Number two, what is it used for? And number three, making it, putting it together. And quite possibly another video will go over how to use it, but I think I'll touch on it in this video also. So planting mix, first and foremost, is not the same as potting soil or potting mix. Potting soils, potting mixes are used exactly for that, for pots, for containers. They are sometimes soilless, sometimes they have soil in them, and it's pretty much used for planting out things in containers. They are specific blends that are designed to retain moisture, also provide good drainage, and add nutrients into the soil in order to feed the plants that are growing in them. Planting mix, on the other hand, is, as the name suggests, it's a soil amendment that's used during planting or transplanting of new plants. Typically, they are meant for trees and shrubs, but in my case, I use planting mix for everything. Typically, I buy it, and this is the first time I'm ever putting it together. So I went to the sources of planting mix that I typically use, found out what they put in them, did a little bit of research as to why what is put into it, and then I decided to look through my garage, because as some of you know already, I keep hordes of soil amendments in my garage, and I only had to purchase one or two items in order to add to this. Some of the things I got for free, other things I had to go out and purchase for a minimal cost. But again, planting mix is used for planting new shrubs, trees, perennials. Typically they're not used for annuals because again they're a one-season plant. But anything that you're putting in the ground that you're intending to last for years and years, you want to use a planting mix on. Planting mix can also be used for side dressing and top dressing. Again, it's just pretty much a soil amendment. It's intended to add nutrients to your soil to help with drainage. It's supposed to help with root penetration rather, and it's also intended to help break up hard clay soils. Now, if you have a rich, loamy, soft soil, you don't need planting mix. So it's again intended to add drainage, aeration, and help with the tilth of your soil. So I have my cheat sheet. I'm going to be telling you and showing you what all I'm using and the ratios that I'm using. Again, this is my first time putting this thing together, so we're going to see together how my interpretation on planting mix goes. Alright, so typically I use Dr. Earth's Motherland All-Purpose Planting Mix, and theirs contains aged fir bark, sawdust, composted green waste, peat moss, redwood sawdust, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, potassium sulfate, humic acid, kelp meal, endo and ectomycorrhizae, beneficial soil microbes, kelp flour, dolomite lime, gypsum, and a wetting agent. That's a mouthful. I'm using, and when I can't find Dr. Earth's planting mix, I go to Home Depot and purchase Kellogg's planting mix, but I haven't been able to find either this year. I guess with the pandemic, there's a shortage of everything. So I kind of did a little bit of research to find out what all was good for what and what it does in the soil, and I decided to see what I could find in my area to substitute for some of these ingredients that they use. Of course, I don't know the ratios, so I'm doing my own ratios. I'm using premium bark mulch to sub in for the aged fir bark and the fir bark. I'm using pine soil conditioner, sawdust, compost, peat moss, kelp meal, pecan hulls, black gypsum, dolomite lime, alfalfa meal, and a couple of other secret flavor weapons, if you will. So I'm going to be mixing it up in this big wheelbarrow that you can't see right now. But let's talk about what each of these things are good for and what it does in your soil. I'm going to be mixing it up in this 5-gallon Lowe's bucket. This is 1 part, so some things are going to be 1 part, 1.5 parts, a quarter part, what have you. So I'm going to be using this and this to measure out my ingredients and dump them in my big pot and stir them around. So the mulch and the soil conditioner, and I'm going to give you close-ups on all of these things and I get ready to dump them in. These are mainly for aeration and drainage, and most of the things that I'm going to be putting in are for aeration and drainage. So everything that goes into planting mix is meant for one of three things. It's either going to add to the aeration and drainage, it's either going to provide nutrients, whether macro or micro, and it's going to help with the roots being able to permeate the soil, penetrate the soil rather, and establish a stronger root system. So the sawdust, which I got for free at Lowe's, I just went and I asked them if they could dump their sawdust into a bag for me, because when they cut the wood, it produces sawdust. So the only danger with this thing is if someone acts to cut pressure treated wood, then those chemicals are going to be in here. But let's pray that that's not the case. So I'm just thinking that this is all safe organic sawdust. So sawdust in small amounts will increase organic matter and improve soil texture. Because sawdust is very slow to decompose, it works very well to break up heavy clay soil, which is what I have. Sawdust needs nitrogen to decompose, and as it's decomposing, it'll actually take nitrogen away from the soil in order for it to decompose. So in order to combat that, you have to add in nitrogen, more nitrogen to your planting mix in order to not have the sawdust rob nitrogen from your plants. So we're not going to be adding in a ton of this, but small amounts won't have that great of an effect. What really you want to be careful with when it comes onto sawdust is when you use it as a top dressing or as a mulch. Some people use a thick, very almost mulch-like sawdust or saw material as a top dressing, and that is where the nitrogen stealing aspect of it comes in more so. But this is very finely milled, and so we're going to use a small amount so that way, you know, we're not dealing with that issue. Compost is obviously going to add some nutrients into the soil. Peat moss. Kelp meal adds valuable micronutrients, growth hormones, and vitamins. It improves soil structure and reduces plant stress from drought. And one source actually says that kelp meal, I said kelp meal, right? Kelp meal increases frost tolerance. Who knew? So this is the kelp meal that I'm going to be using. I thought I had more than this, but I don't. The compost that I'm going to be using is here. It's the Leaf Grow brand. Again, the sawdust came from Lowe's. The next thing I'm going to be using is alfalfa meal. And I got the Down to Earth brand. I think I paid about $10 for it. High quality alfalfa meal, which is what I believe this is totally weed free. This is OMRI listed organic. It adds nitrogen and trace minerals to the soil, so we're going to be using this to help combat the sawdust. And it contains a natural fatty acid growth stimulant called triananthacol, and it's used to improve the tilth of your soil. We're going to be adding dolomite lime as a pH adjuster, and we're going to be adding black gypsum. Gypsum helps with breaking up hard pan and clay soils. Humates or humic acid neutralizes acidic and alkaline soils, regulates pH, and improves the uptake of nutrients and water by the plants. The type of gypsum that I'm using is called black gypsum, which has humates in it already. It's 70% gypsum and 30%, I think that's the ratio, humates. And the brand that I use is Claims. Again, I've never used it before, never tested it before, but we'll see together. It claims that it provides further chelating of applied and existing nutrients, increasing their availability to the soil. So in clay soils, the nutrients are in the soil, but because of the hard pan and the hard clay, it's bound up in the soil, and the plants can't uptake it. uptake it. The chelating effect breaks down that hard pan, breaks down that clay soil, and makes the nutrients more available to the plant. So this claims that it speeds up the process even more, so we will see. Some other things, I do have some microbes and endo and ectomycorrhizae in this John and Bob's Smart Soil Solutions Maximize. So I'm going to be adding that in. I have some fishbone meal I'm going to be adding in. I have some worm castings, some vermiculite, and I believe that's it. Did I say pecan hulls? I think I went over the pecan hulls. I'm also adding pecan hulls. They acidify the soil and they improve aeration. So, now that I've talked your ears to death, let's start dumping these things into my wheelbarrow, and we'll get them mixed up and see how it turns out. Let's get started. I'm going to add 1.5 parts of pine bark mulch. And again, you can see here that this is just a regular mulch. So again, a part in this instance is a 5-gallon bucket full. So I'm going to add 7 gallons of my bulk bark. Next, we're going to add in a 1/2 part of my soil conditioner, which is going to be half of this 5-gallon bucket. Now, the soil conditioner, again, just looks like mulch. Next is my sawdust, and we're going to add a 1/4 part, which is 1 and I think 1/4 gallons, but I'm just going to add 5 quarts of that. Next up is our compost, and we're going to add 1/2 part, which is 2.5 gallons. It's really fine, and it works wonders. Next up, we have peat moss, and we're going to do 1/2 part. Next is our kelp meal. I don't have much of it left, but I had planned on adding a 1/4 part. And that was probably like a tablespoon's worth. I actually purchased these from a company called Milliken Pecan Corporation, and I think they're based out of Texas. But again, these are just pecan shells. And I'm going to be adding in 1/2 part. And there are actually some pecans in here. Look, there's some pecans, leftover pecans in there. Right on top. We're gonna add 1 part of our black gypsum. And that's what it looks like. Now, if anybody's ever made planting mix before and you're gasping at my ratios, please make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know, what your thoughts are on my ratios, on the mix. These are all organic products. Again, except for the sawdust, which I can't speak for. So, if you use all organic products, you shouldn't have to worry about root burning. Lastly, I'm going to add an ice cream scoop of lime to correct for any pH issues. So that's your base layer. And then from there, you can pretty much add in anything you want in order to boost any particular nutrient deficiency that you're experiencing in your soil. So I'm going to add a little bit of worm castings. I'm going to add a bit of fish bone meal. Just about an ice cream scoop full. I'm going to add a little bit of vermiculite. I'm going to add in my microbes. And again, that was my microbes. So my battery died. I don't know where we left, what the last thing that was recorded, but I added in some azomite rock dust, I added in some fish bone meal, and I added in my microbes. And now, I'm just gonna get in here and mix it up. And that's it. It's done. I know that many of you might not have access to some of these materials locally, so I will try to find links to some of these things and put them in the description box. But if you can't find them there, then unfortunately I wasn't able to track them down. But you can always search and to see if there are any hydroponics or aquaponics stores in your area. And honestly, a lot of these things came from my local hydroponics shop. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments section below. I hope you were able to learn something from this video, or at least it was inspiring to you. Again, this is my first time making my own planting mix, so we'll see together how this turns out. Thanks for subscribing, liking, watching, commenting, and sharing. Let me know again in the comments below what you think about this planting mix, if you've ever used planting mix before, if you've ever made your own planting mix, what you'd add, what you'd take away. Just let's start a conversation down below. Thanks again for all the support, guys. Remember in all things to give thanks, and we'll catch you in the next video.